Yo, what's up guys? Another guide video talking about the free-to-play Brandia. We all know Brandia. Brandia is mainly used for that skill 3 hitting a lot of damage, mainly used in Steel Fortress, Punisher's Crypt, R5, and is doing the highest amount of damage out there. That is still going to be the case. She's definitely still going to be the highest damage out there. However, there's a recent buff unit which can actually do her job, and in some places maybe even better. Honorable mention, no, it's not Crow. Crow definitely does have the same style of doing damage when more harmful effects, but there's another unit, and that is Argen. And Argen is full free to play as well because he's in the fusion circle. He has a skill 1 that's kind of useless, we don't really like this one. A skill 2 that has a attack break, speed decrease, but then also beneficial block, which is 100% activation. But now on the skill 3, there's also a block beneficial effects, and it has a higher chance of landing the brandings. So we have a 3 times chance for the branding and the beneficial block remove. I do think, like I'm not sure if it's worded correctly, that the branding is at 30% chance, but the beneficial block is at 100%. And that is just from what I've been testing it so far. Plus we have a 25% extra damage for all of the debuffs. And he already lands 2 debuffs with this skill itself. So it's kind of the setup, but also the damage skill for that right away. So where does that become useful? Well, pretty much the same things that I just mentioned for Brandia. However, there's one more place, which I think is very interesting as well. Well, first of all, this. It's very interesting over here. This is still the setup for Necro, but that also means that you can use Argan probably on just one build for multiple dungeons. Probably even 4. No, wait, 5. So if you don't want to rune up too many units, Argan is actually a unit that you can place in a lot of places. So let me show you what all of those places are. So in this case, I have a buff blocker over here, buff blocker over here. If you want to make this to the fastest team, I think you can actually remove those 2 for a Gina and a Zinc. And you have 4 units that buff block. Sure, Argan is probably not going to be one-shotting the whole boss, but having 4 buff blockers in there is very likely for the boss to be buff blocked, and therefore you're actually killing the thing. So yeah, if it then goes wrong and you're missing buff blocks at that moment, then yeah, just the game just doesn't like you. let's just call it that way. But in this case, I think I can remove one of the buff blockers and put in a Nungrim just to make things a little bit faster for this team. So once again, I'm on the beginner account, and yeah, I'm showcasing it from the beginner account because I think most of the main accounts that have been playing for a longer time will already have a Brandia, and Brandia for this stage might still be better, but I'm not 100% sure. Like if you feel like your team is failing too much, then you could still put in an Argan. My Argan is not skilled up, so a skilled up Argan is a lot better because he actually goes -1 on the cooldown on the S3, gets a higher activation rate on the S2, does more damage on the S2. So definitely you would want to have those skill ups. They're just very easy to get by fusions, but I'm lazy and I don't like fusing, so therefore this unit is not fused up. But let's see, we do have Argan with the chance to do buff block or his 3rd skill more often the moment that there's already debuffs. So in this case, we did see a bunch of buff blocks popping up. So therefore, I do think that the buff block is actually an activation rate of 100%. We do have that issue where he still takes quite some damage and that kind of stuff. But let's see if we can get a hit from him in where he would do his S3 at this moment. He doesn't have his S3 up. So yeah, definitely you do want to get those skill ups up. But I would say that this is a pretty solid team for beginners. That Argan is very useful in this. So if you don't have Brandia and you are putting Crow in here, but you see a lot of fails, I would definitely recommend to put Argan in there because you have another slot of buff blockers. Sure, it's maybe going to be a little bit slower. Crow could maybe do a little bit more damage. But in the end, if you look at this skill, it does go down to 3-turn cooldown because you have the skill ups, which we can't check from here. Still annoying that we can't see the skill ups everywhere all the time, all at once. Something like that. But yeah, we can see that if we would max skill it, it's going to be 3 turns. And that 3 turns is definitely something that you do want to get. Also, this one goes down to 3 turns. So you have 2 skills at 3 turns cooldown. That will give the buff block. So definitely SF. I think SF is probably the most useful place you can place that. But you could also place it at Punisher's Crypt. Punisher's Crypt is slightly different, you might say, because I'm using a team like this. In this case, I had this unit which would go for the slow. But we also have a slow on Argan skill too. So with that reason, you could actually go for an Argan in here as well. Argan would do a lot more damage. It's just that his S1 is not really that great. It would be nice if his S1 also had something slightly interesting, and that would make him a lot better. It would also be very nice if Argan actually had a useful leader skill, because his leader skill is dungeon based. All of the vampires are dungeon based. However, Argan happened to get the resistance in the dungeon base, which is just pretty weak. Okay, there Argan actually did this skill and didn't land anything. I do have to say that my Argan is actually on 25 on accuracy, which might be a little bit too low for these dungeons, which definitely could be a thing. But yeah, we do know that the third has the leader skill of speed. We do know that the, what's it called? The Igar has the leader skill of attack. It would be nice. I think Cadiz probably has the crit rate leader skill, and that's why he's not going to get the crit rate leader skill. But it would be nice if Argan maybe gets the crit rate leader skill or something like that. That would definitely be a nice upgrade for him. But is he actually going to get that ever? Probably not really. So in this case, let's see where he can do his skills. Will he do his skills? We go for Death Blow, Resisted. Yep, we need more accuracy on that unit. But otherwise, there will be a branding on this unit, which would have been very beneficial. We still have the S2 from him, which is also pretty beneficial, and that S2 will actually land a slow as well, if he actually decides to land that. But we have a slow from Igar as well. So once again, if you don't want to ruin up too many units, it's a unit that you can use towards this dungeon as well, because in this dungeon, it is pretty decent to pretty good. Is it the best in slot? Maybe not really. Once again, he's never really best in slot, except for maybe SF. But he is pretty decent in slot, and therefore you don't have to ruin up as many units. Another place I've been using him in is this team. I do happen to pull the Shaman, but I don't happen to have an Astar yet. If I don't have an Astar, then this team is actually pretty replaceable by having that. Well, I also don't have the, what's it called, the Cannon Girl yet. So this is the team that I use, and it's slow. Yes, that's definitely a thing, but is it also slow because of bad runes? Yeah, kind of. But this team is definitely something that does make it work, to where you just get a lot of debuffs in, they start dealing a bit more damage. And if you don't happen to have the Astar, you don't happen to have the Cannon Girl, I think that these two are the best free-to-play replacements, because both of them, of course, are free-to-play units. The only one not full free-to-play is the Shaman in this team, but if you don't happen to have Shaman, there's a few other units that could also kind of replace. That would probably put a Colleen. It's going to be even slower, but it's going to be safe enough. But yeah, there's a few options in there that you can do. But Argan definitely is a nice unit for this. I also have Argan on the highest attack, that he gets stolen and he will always go for the Ikaru. I don't really care about that, but the fun fact about the buff block is Ikaru is not going to get the counter. So it kind of speeds things up in this case. Maybe also kind of slows things down, because you kind of want that counter in to get that extra hit in on the boss and that kind of stuff. And the buff block on him doesn't really help, unless you were maybe using a unit that could also buff the boss, and in this case is not gonna buff the boss or something weird. But yeah, he's full focusing on the Ikaru always. So, and Ikaru is the highest the highest defense unit in here. So that's also the unit that can take the damage the best as well. So with that all of the combined, Argan is actually very good in slot here. That's not gonna kill your whole team, because he's only going to be focusing on that one unit that is super tanky. So once again, another slot where Argan is pretty decent. Then we also have R5. It's too bad for R5 the dungeon lead doesn't count, because this would be the best place where you could also use his lead as a early game solo R5 team. So in this case, that part doesn't really work, but you can still place him in. In this case, I just removed him for the Ikaru. He could be on a lot of places. He could be a replacement for a Shaolin if you don't have the unit, a Naomi if you didn't want to build it, a Nunkrim if you didn't want to build it. So there's a lot of places that you could place it in. It could be over one of the twins. It's just one of the damage dealers that also gives a bunch of debuffs. In this case, is buff block going to be useful? No, not at all. But the branding that he has on the skill 3 is going to be useful. So once again, he's also probably not going to be doing the most of damage, but let's actually see like how far he can get on his damage. So we have a lot of debuffs already. Let's see if he goes for his hit. We have triple 30Ks. That's actually not bad for a set. He's on Vio, by the way. So he's still on Vio for Necro. Is he really a must on Vio for Necro? Not at all. I would just put him on a damage set with either Fatal or Rage, and then a little bit higher accuracy, because you want him to land those things in the first place. But as you can see, he's actually doing quite a lot of damage. He's not in the highest damage team, it seems, because that's this team, so the Crow and the Nunkrim are doing more damage. But yeah, he has pretty good damage with that as well, so definitely a unit you can place to R5 as well. Then the final place where you could actually place him is in Giants. And a fun fact about Giants is the first one in rotation where they're going to change the passive skill or change the skill that is added based on Abyss Heart. And what does that mean? Abyss Heart always picks one skill, changes that, and then makes the dungeon slightly more difficult. In this case, for Giants, it's going to be that counter AoE. They were planning to make every half a year all of the dungeons change their skill and then have a slightly different thing. But in this case, at some point they said like, okay, we're not going to do that every half year, we're going to do that every year. I think we're pretty close to the point where Giants is going to be having his first change, and that's the first one of the whole rotation getting its change as well. What does that mean? That they actually recently buffed Argan to get a buff block? And would that maybe be in correlation with this thing getting a certain buff? Maybe a defense buff, maybe an immunity, maybe something else? And for that reason, I actually kind of think that they already pre-buffed Argan to maybe be like the hard counter to the change that this boss is gonna have when they have that rotation change. I could be very wrong on that, but hey, if they did it, then at least I already said it, right? So that's kind of the thing. Is Argan really good here? Well, to be honest, not really. And the reason why I say not really, he's kind of good, don't get me wrong, he's the right element. He does do like the extra damage. The buff block thing actually kind of works because the left tower is able to give the boss attack buff, which in this case he wouldn't be giving attack buff. He has the attack break, he has the slow, so it's definitely not bad. But the bad issue about Argan is that he multi-hits. And the S1 is 2 multi-hits, which we don't really like to see in the first place. Like those hits just don't really help. There's not too many debuffs in here, so he's not going to be able to get perfect AI. And he's going to force that counter a lot more. However, his skill 2 with the attack break and his skill 3 with the branding and then extra damage. But the S3 is 3 hits, so you don't really like that. However, if they change this passive to the counter thing being slightly different, then Argan could become very useful in Giants as well. So that is something that we will look out for the moment that they change Giants. I'm not entirely sure when they're planning to do that. I think it could be either February or March, maybe even April, something along that line. I'm not even sure how long have we been having the Abyssal Hard dungeons out there, but I definitely do think that is one of those buffs. I think between now and next balance patch, they're probably going to change that, and then we will see like, now it makes sense why Argan is buffed. Yeah, but you definitely do need more accuracy on him, and I would put him to a full damage set. If you put him to a full damage set, he can easily hit upwards of like 50k per hit, or even more if you have like a bunch of debuffs on that. So he can definitely do a lot of damage. Is he ever going to be doing more damage than a Brandia? No, definitely not. Is he going to be doing more damage than a Crow? Probably most likely not as well. So Crow for the straight up damage output in here is definitely still better. But would you like to say like, okay, I don't want to ruin multiple units all the time. I want to use the least amount of units to clear all of the dungeons possible. Then Argan is actually one of those few units that can be used in a lot of slots. It's pretty much used everywhere except for dragons. Or you could use it everywhere except for dragons. And this is kind of the case, like he's forcing that countering too fast and therefore it's not really beneficial. That's kind of a thing, but yeah, Argan in the end can be used for 5 different dungeons, which is more than most units. So definitely Argan is a unit you want to look at if you do not happen to have the Brandia yet. And we're gonna see for that buff in Giants if that's actually enabling Argan even more. So that's all there is for this video, guys. Thanks a lot for watching, and see you as always in the next one. Thanks for watching. If you would like to see more guides, join the Discord and check out the content tab, which has the dungeon guide archive and the video guide archive, which contains all of the guides that you need. Hope to see you there.